Tonight, someone you love is going to die. Not tonight, maybe. Not this year, maybe. But the certainty of it is already living inside you, and your body knows it, even when your mind refuses to look directly at the thought. You feel it in the way a funeral makes a room go silent, in the way a stranger's obituary can stop you mid-scroll and hold you there for a moment you cannot explain. Death does something to you, something ancient, something that has nothing to do with the year you were born. Here is what almost no one tells you. The way you respond to death, the rituals, the grief, the compulsion to gather and mark the moment is not a cultural invention. It was already running inside you long before civilization existed. The urge to do something when someone dies is one of the oldest impulses in the human story. And what your ancestors actually did will change the way you understand grief. When did humans first begin burying their dead? For most of the last century, the answer was roughly 100,000 years ago. But in 2023, researchers at a site called Pangaya Site in Kenya rewrote that timeline. A child, roughly 3 years old, had been carefully buried in a pit approximately 78,000 years ago. The body was positioned on its side, knees drawn gently toward the chest. Deliberate, intentional. Researchers named the child Mtoto, which means child in Swahili. When findings appeared in Nature, what struck scientists most was not just the age of the burial, it was the care. Care. That word carries everything. Burying someone is not the easy option. When an animal loses a group member in the wild, the default outcome is to leave the body and move on. The energy cost of staying, digging, and marking is significant. Your ancestors paid that cost anyway, and that choice, repeated across tens of thousands of years and dozens of cultures separated by oceans and centuries, tells you something profound. You're not just a survival machine. You are something stranger and more beautiful than that. At Sungir, near Vladimir in Russia, archaeologists uncovered burials around 34,000 years old. 2 children were buried head-to-head in a single grave. On their bodies were more than 10,000 hand-carved ivory beads, fox-tooth pendants, and 2 mammoth tusk spears, requiring extraordinary skill to create. Researcher Randall White, who spent decades studying Upper Paleolithic ornamental culture, estimated the beadwork alone represented thousands of hours of labor. These were not just objects. They were a community pouring its time and love into the dead before letting them go. Your ancestors did not grieve alone. They grieved together through work. This matters. The modern instinct when grief arrives is to isolate, to go quiet, to wait until the feeling passes. But the archaeological record shows your deepest ancestors did exactly the opposite. When someone died, the group came closer. They made things. They spent collective energy on the person who could no longer receive it. That act, pouring labor into loss, is one of the oldest forms of healing your species has ever found. Researcher Paul Pettit, a paleoanthropologist at Durham University, argues that elaborate burial is not primarily about belief in an afterlife. It is about the living. A death fractures the social fabric. The rituals, the objects, the gathering. These are the tools your ancestors used to stitch it back together. At Catalhoyuk in Turkey, some residents were buried beneath the floors of their own homes, beneath the hearth, beneath the sleeping platform. The dead did not leave. They were kept close. Researcher Ian Hodder, who led excavations there for decades, found that skulls were sometimes removed from graves and kept among the living as objects of memory. Your ancestors saw death not as a wall, but as a threshold. The body was a bridge, tended and revisited across time. You still do this. Every time you visit a grave on an anniversary, every time you keep an object that belonged to someone gone, every time you tell a story about the dead and feel them briefly present in the room, you are participating in a ritual at least 78,000 years old. Psychologist George Bonanno at Columbia University found that mourning is not about severing the bond with the dead. It is about transforming it, carrying it forward into memory, into the ivory bead and the painted bone. Your grief is not fragility. It is proof the bond was real. Tonight, somewhere, people are gathering near a body and telling stories, lighting candles, crying and then laughing and then crying again. They look like they're mourning, but from the place where the ancient ritual lives in you, something else is happening. They are making a person visible one last time. They are pouring labor into that loss. They are stitching the fabric back together. They are doing what humans have always done when someone they love disappears from the world. They are making sure they are not nothing.